Welcome back to Morning Live as I try and fix my earpiece here in the program. It's great to have you with us on this Friday morning. So the time now is 18 minutes before the top of the hour. The public service wage bill continues to put excessive pressure on the country's depressed economy. This was raised by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni during his midterm budget speech while outlining some of government's plans to grow the economy and at the same time reduce expenditure. Announcing some of the measures in dealing with the country's economic crisis, Mboweni said the wage bill has to be reduced to ease pressure on the economy. Meanwhile, Public Service and Administration Minister Senzo Mchunu is working with stakeholders in the public sector, including unions, to talk about wage costs. And he's here in studio with us to discuss this further. Minister, thanks for coming in. Good to have you.
Good morning to you and to the listeners.
So obviously the wage bill is a big issue, and this was again highlighted in our midterm budget. So
yes,
we'll focus quite a bit on that and see what's being done to try and bring this wage bill down, because that was one of the first point of orders from the finance ministers to get that wage bill down.
Yes.
How many civil servants are we speaking of? What are the numbers looking like?
Well, at the moment, we are speaking about 1.1 million public servants that are in the employ of public service. But this excludes people who are in the SOEs and other entities. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's much bigger than 1.1 when you talk about it, if you're excluding
Yes.
those that work for SOEs. I mean, is there a kind of ballpark amount of numbers that we can think of once you start including the SOE staff?
Well, look, let me shift from numbers and come and say the real problem that we're tackling and how we're approaching it is that the pressure is on the cost of running public administration in the Republic. Public wage bill is one item in that overall cost that which is our concern at the moment. And there are three line items on this matter. The first one is, of course, in the whole of the cost of running public administration in the Republic. So the first item is the wage bill, of course, but the second one is the leaks in the fiscus of the state, and the third one is it's the buildings and all of that that we are
maintenance,
actually
the buildings you're talking to people
hiring, maintenance, and so on and so on. And in terms of the on the leaks, that's number one. And secondly, it is the litigations that are running across all departments or many departments now, and also what the Auditor General decides from time to time and comes out as irregular expenditure, fruitless expenditure. Those are the things that are receiving our concern or our attention and are of major concern.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not just the wage bill. So we're asking South Africans and all of us in government to shift our mindset from just the wage bill and broaden it to say we have to reduce the cost of running public administration in the Republic. And in that venture, we have to deal with the wage bill, of course, and then we have to deal with costs.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to deal with leaks in the fiscus.
I agree with you, and I mean, there is a lot to talk about, but if we can just focus a bit on this wage bill, because
Yes.
that was really highlighted by the Finance Minister. In fact,
Yes.
I mean, he's talking to a debt where of 3 billion expected to rise to 4.5 trillion, not 3 billion, 3 trillion
Yes.
is where the country is sitting, is expected to rise to 4.5 trillion of that. And the wage bill is one of the biggest culprits. And,
Yes.
and when you look at the amount of people that are employed by the state and the cost to the state, it is huge. And this is where it's been identified that these costs need to be lowered. So let's perhaps focus on that for a bit. How are we going to lower it?
Let me talk a little bit about numbers. Three quarters of the total number of the number of public servants come from health, come from education and police. And when you go to each police station or to clinics and schools and so on, you don't see any bloated numbers in those places. And and in terms of our count, which we have compared with other countries, we compare very favorably with other countries in terms of public servants to citizens. And when you look at those three categories of public servants, they are the dominant ones. And we've shifted, therefore, from the assertion that says we have a problem of numbers. What do we rather have? So people mustn't, there may be excessive numbers maybe in that section of a department or that one, which means, but overall, when you count the total number of public servants, we compare very comfortably with other countries all over the world. But where we agree is the wage bill itself, not based on numbers, but based on, as a result of what has been happening in terms of policies, in terms of agreements, in terms of many other conditions of service over years that have tended to now accumulate into a wage bill.
Yeah.
So we agree on the wage bill, but not on there may be nothing much wrong with the numbers. The problem is on the wage bill. So what are we doing about the wage bill? This is an issue that requires engagement with labor. And as we talk to you, we are preparing to have these discussions with labor. First, just to say, here are the numbers, here is a problem, and we can't go further in this particular way. Something has to change. We have to deal with this going forward. Just not the what so much at that stage. Just to say, can we all appreciate this problem? Leave who has caused it. Don't point fingers. Leave who has done wrong, who has done correctly. Leave who has benefited, who has not benefited. Just say, here is a problem. It's just like when there's fire in this house. Your first thing is to run out before you say, no, I'm not getting out until I know who has caused fire, when fire is coming. So we have to deal with that matter on the table, finalize it. And then once we agree, once everybody appreciates that there's a problem, and the problem is a threat to the fiscus of the state, leave the issue, why are they not growing the economy, what's that? Let's just talk about this problem. We agree it's a problem, and we are preparing to engage.
So how long are these talks going to take? Because I think we may have spoken 3 months ago, and the same sort of reasoning was brought through that you were going to discuss this with the unions and we'd get to the bottom of it and bring an update. This hasn't happened yet. And as we sit now, the public sector wage bill, since 2006, it was 154 billion rand. Now,
yes,
as we sit in 2019, this wage bill is at 518 billion rand. I would say the fire is getting out of control, wouldn't you?
Yes, it's a major worry. I agree with you. That's why we are saying we have to get into engagements with labor. But to say, how long are we going to? It's a matter that I can leave to those engagements. But it's not like we haven't started. But we have started to introduce these matters, even though not in a structured way. But we have already started to say, we're flagging this, we're flagging that, we're flagging that. It requires all of us to sit down and discuss. But at the same time, we are then saying it's not going to be an easy thing because once you put money into pockets of people, you can't then go back and say you are demanding and you are wanting it out. It's a question of saying where we stand. You may have heard that we're asking everybody to make a contribution in this regard, and that's why I support the Minister of Finance when he says for now and for the foreseeable future, there aren't any salary increases for the executives.
Indeed.
Because executives also are part of this, and we must lead the way, and we must accept that much as we would want some increase of one form in one form or the other, but the situation simply does not is not conducive for us to do so.
Yeah.
And we have to make a bit of a sacrifice. That is why we have to go to labor and also explain the problem and call for everybody to sacrifice. In what form that sacrifice will take, it has to come, but it has to come in the interest of South Africa as a whole, and it has to involve all of us. And we have to accept the situation in which we are.
Indeed. The ministerial handbook with regard to all of this, I know that we got to see that, and I think it was approved by the President. It was in June this year.
Yes.
But since then, the Finance Minister has come out and even stated more that needs to be cut down. For instance, ministers, as he announced in his midterm budget, will no longer be allowed to fly business class. They must fly economy class.
Yes.
That they are having a pay freeze. In fact, packages will be revised downwards in the next 3 years. So these are all things. Is the ministerial handbook going to be revised now to include what the minister has said?
Yes, we were working with Minister Mboweni on that. It's a task that was given to us by Cabinet, and also with Minister Patricia Tilil.
Yeah.
We are almost done with the ministerial handbook. It's a question of making the final submission to the President for the final consideration. But it's something that we've submitted, and there were minor things to deal with, and we are getting done with it probably today. And those cards are there. We no longer are expected as executives, together with public servants, senior staff, to fly business class. We have to be in economy. And the upgrades, you would remember that upgrades, when you get appointed as Minister or MEC, and then you qualify for upgrades of up to 100,000, and that was increased a few years ago to 250,000. But now that all of that has been removed totally.
Good.
Not reduced,
Removed.
Totally removed.
Yeah.
And there are a number of other things, of course, that have taken that trend.
I know there was one clause as well where it says that if there are renovations happening at a ministerial residence, it says that there will be reasonable rented alternative accommodation for a certain amount of time. But then we saw ministers staying in 5-star hotels for months on end, and this, of course, is costing the state. Has that been removed?
Yes, very much. All those things that are regarded as unnecessary costs and frills have been done away with. And I take it that Public Works is in control of that particular situation, so that we really are on a path of reversing the spend.
Yeah, it's a heavy burden on South Africans and the tax, and we're seeing that South Africa is now struggling. I know we don't want to talk to blame and we don't want to point fingers at anyone, but the minister himself, the finance minister, stood there and said that all because of these wage bills that were inflated over these years, he pointed fingers at Richard Baloyi and Faith Mutambi, and he said that he doesn't know how it got inflated so much over their time, but it was not right. The wage adjustments were way above inflation, and it should never have done that. How do you now bring that down? That's the big question. They were inflated too much?
Well,
how do you bring it down?
Well, at policy level, one of the things that we've identified is the many mechanisms that determine salary increases in the Republic, that it is not working out. We have to reduce that probably to one mechanism, and that's why we're talking now about the mechanism to deal with wage setting in the Republic as a policy, so that you don't have various authorities, various determinants, various mechanisms through which public servants get increases in terms of their salaries. It has to be simplified. It has to be narrowed down to one, because while you are dealing with this, there's another increase via another mechanism elsewhere. And so one of the things that we're looking at is wage setting mechanisms as a policy that will be agreed on and implemented going forward.
Minister, just as we head towards wrapping now, I still think the issue of talking to the unions is still a big one, because I remember it was during the former Minister Ayanda Dlodlo's stint as Public Service and Administration Minister. There were talks about government planning on retrenching around about 30,000 jobs.
Yes.
That, of course, was refuted by government. But there's still talk that there are too many public servants, there are too many people that are reliant on the government, and it's turning into a big issue. But when we have such high unemployment and yet the state is too heavy on this wage bill, how do we balance that? I mean, the unions are saying if you start retrenching, there will be huge trouble. What is the balancing act? What is the way forward?
Well, we're shifting from the issue of early retirement, as was stated before. We're getting back to just Act 66, subsection 6, that allows any public servant to approach any EA, that is executive authority, to allow them to retire early, ordinarily, for one reason or the other. So we're just leaving it at that. You remember that was up to the 30th of September. That period has gone. We didn't get the required number, but there were people who did approach us, and we will process what they've requested. But that of course is not the major mechanism through which we can address and resolve this particular problem. There is this comprehensive way or comprehensive approach that we've designed that we will use in terms of as a way of as one mechanism of engaging with the unions. There are quite a number of issues that we need to deal with. The issue of retrenchments doesn't arise at all. And so we don't want anyone out there in the public service to expect that or to sit and expect that we're calling for retrenchments. We are worried and concerned about the wage bill, but we're saying that there are a number of mechanisms through which we can deal with this particular problem. Some have started, but we still have to settle down and resolve this matter.
Minister, we thank you so much for your time. We'll certainly bring you again into studio once more negotiations have been completed and furthered with the unions to discuss all of this. But this morning, the Public Service and Administration Minister, Senzo Mchunu, talking to us here about the role of his department in reducing the very heavy public service wage bill on